Um, I'm not gonna do that. Um, well, I'm gonna react to Story Booth if you can see. Okay, so yeah, there you go.
So when I was younger, all my cousins would come over to my house and hang out with my sister and I. The parents would go to work and the kids would look after each other. Hashtag immigrant hustle. Now, one day shortly after our parents left, we were in the middle of playing video games when the house phone rang. Yeah, a house phone. It's like a cell phone, but attached to your house. Oh, God, I'm showing my age. So my older cousin answered it. Hello? Hello? No answer. Weird, but whatever. So we continued playing video games until the phone rang again. This time another cousin answered. Same thing. No answer. Now, at this point, we could have made up rational conclusions such as, maybe it's the wrong number or bad connection, a telemarketer, whatever. But that's not what kids do. Instead, we concluded that someone was definitely trying to murder us and we should come up with a master plan to stop it. Come to think of it, this might have been around the holidays and we may or may not have been watching Home Alone, but I swear to God, that doesn't have anything to do with it. So it began. We decided we were going to document whenever we would receive calls. I mean, all the details, the date, the time, everything. Now, we noticed a pattern in the calls that happened every single day. And by pattern, I mean we made this conclusion on day 2. What? Okay, listen, patterns can be 2 days. But either way, this became our new obsession. On day 3, we received more calls than usual. It was definitely a sign. So we began to brainstorm. Is it a robber? A spirit? A demon? The possibilities were endless. Something just didn't feel right. Our brainstorm was interrupted by one of my cousins when they said, "Hey, did you hear that?" Now, I definitely did not, but nonetheless, I replied, "Yes, oh my God, what was that?" I didn't want to be the first to die by denying the presence of the demon. I mean, maybe something was in our house. It was time to take action. We gathered all of the utensils in the drawers and headed straight to the master bedroom. The plan was simple: lock ourselves in the room as a group and create a safe haven. Duh. I don't know why people in horror movies always split up. Is this your first day? But before locking ourselves in the room, we strategically placed 3 toys on the floor, spaced out perfectly. Hours went by with us locked in that room, pacing, stressing, sweating, and terrified of the phone ringing. But eventually, our hunger got the best of us, and we were in desperate need of Oreos. So we decided to slowly and carefully make our way to the kitchen. After what seems like a lifetime, we finally made it to the kitchen and let out a huge sigh of relief. We're fine. We're just acting ridiculous. Until one of my cousins says, "One of the pigs fell." We freeze. Together, we slowly look over at where we placed the line of piggies and notice that one had taken a tumble. How? Who could have possibly knocked it over? Or rather, what? We freak out. Now, at this point, it's survival mode. It's either us or the demon, and we decide we need to stand our ground. We open every door within the house, each holding the biggest utensil we could find and screaming. Door, open, jab, fork, scream, repeat. Door, open, jab, fork, repeat. But we found nothing. A couple hours later, our parents came home and everyone left. Since that day, we never received a call. We never felt anything suspicious. I mean, obviously, which demon wants to mess with a bunch of kids holding some forks?
Alright, so another one could share this one.
Hello, I'm Monica, and my stepmother hated me so much I had to move out. But let's start from the beginning. My mom died when I was around 3 years old, and it made my dad miserable because he loved her very much. For years, he was single, not even daring to start dating again. But when I was 14, he met Taylor. She kind of looked like my mother, but as I was told, she wasn't anything like her in terms of character. My dad asked me if I would be okay with this, and of course, I said yes because I wanted him to be happy. Soon they married, and Taylor moved in with us, together with her son James, who was 12 at the time. At first, everything was all right. My dad and Taylor loved each other very much, and James was quite easygoing. I hadn't seen my dad so happy in years. But soon, I started to notice how Taylor was manipulating him. She would always make him adapt to her lifestyle, and if she did something wrong, she turned everything around so it was my dad who was at fault. I wasn't having any of it, and Taylor disliked my attitude and started treating me badly and always blaming me if something happened. Even if James did something, it was my fault. For example, she would get angry at me because I didn't wash the dishes, even if there was only one dirty plate, and James ate from it. It was me who got lectured by Taylor, and that's the least of things she would say or do. At first, my dad was trying to defend me, but she eventually made him think that she was right and I was a spoiled, ungrateful kid. She told me that I was stealing our money, and it wasn't true. And I don't know where she got this idea from. By this point, our entire family turned on me. Taylor was as condescending as ever, and if I tried to defend myself, my dad would go, "Don't talk with your mother like that." I, of course, answered, "She is not my mother, and she never will be," which would make my dad angry. And James listened to all of this and started to see me as a villain too, and Taylor was turning him against me as well. Why did Taylor do that? I guess she didn't like how much attention my father was giving me, which was understandable because I am his daughter. Ugh. Seeing how Taylor took over our lives, I tried to talk to Dad, but he wouldn't listen. So I approached my grandparents, explained them the situation, and asked if I could move with them. They said yes, and they also disliked Taylor very much. I moved out. Both me and Taylor were happy about it. Living with my grandparents had its own difficulties, but it was way better than living with Taylor. My dad would call me every day and visit every weekend at first, but then he called and visited less and less, probably because Taylor was whining about how he didn't love her. My dad was trapped, but it was his decision, and while I still loved him, I couldn't simply overlook how he treated me. After a year, it felt like I wasn't part of the family at all, and I saw my father 2 times a month at best. At worst, it could go for 2 months without him meeting with me. One day he called me and said, "Honey, please come home. I talked with Taylor and she is okay with that." Seriously? Taylor is okay with that? I rudely answered my father, "I would never even step into the house while she is still there."